Guys, you are all stupendously welcome to the new episode of the podcast, New Earth Kings. As always, like the whole aim and purpose of New Earth Kings, the movement, is to get 1 million plus guys around the planet leading fantastically, amazingly, unstoppably, unapologetically their own personal, local, and global revolutions. And as always, my aim and my only challenge, and to be honest, with the emergence of male consciousness around the planet, it's not such a challenge. There's so many amazing, brilliant lighthouses of inspiration around the world of men just leading in this high vibration revolution around the planet. And no less to join me today is a stupendous guest, is Jared Brown. I have this wonderful sort of a thing today with Jared Brown, which is we just had this beautiful sort of a synchronistic meeting up online, where we had sort of been following each other's sort of online content unwittingly, just sort of over several months. And then just Jared sort of reached out in a message, and it just sort of hit me. I was like, man, you got to get this dude on. Jared, if I'm going to look at, he might sort of, he might describe himself a little bit more accurately after this, but I think the general description of how I'd introduce Jared is a freedom teacher, a spiritual maverick, a guy just figuring his shit out like we're all trying to do humbly. Just Jared has described himself as just in his adult life, looking at the systems, the structures, the beliefs, the behaviors, and just looking at all of this that he was conditioned to believe. And his whole adult life has been dedicated to going beyond that and stripping back all these layers of conditioning to find his true inner child, his true inner essence, just who he is, which is at the epicenter of what the New Earth Kings movement is about. So without any further ado, I don't want to tarnish him with any other words. Let's just jump on with Jared Brown. Jared, brother, you're really welcome on today's episode, sir.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mark. Yeah, like you said, our paths kind of crossed. It was very serendipitous. It was the message that led me to reach out to you was I was experiencing kind of a test of my own edge anyway, and you had popped on with a video about listening to your own inner yes, and it really hit home for me. So yeah, I thought I would shoot you a quick message, and yeah, here we are today.
Cool. It's fantastic. Jared, the part of the introduction, and like it's just I'm fascinated about that process that you've went through as a man. When you wrote about just going through these layers of systems, of structures, of thinking, of beliefs and behaviors, and sort of just slowly but surely emerging into your truest self, your inner child, just that playful essence of a man. Where were you at the beginning? Sort of just gives a little bit of a backstory. Where was Jared Brown at the beginning of that sort of hero's journey, that process of, first of all, noticing, God, there's a lot of conditioning here. Just this, Jared is not Jared. Just gives a bit of backstory and let us know where you've come from.
I would say the beginning of the actual journey probably started in university, really. In my early 20s, just I saw the path that was laid out in front of me, and the path that I was even walking down, and I knew there was so much cognitive dissonance, if you will, of walking down a path knowing intuitively it wasn't right for you, and a path that didn't make sense. And it was around those last 2 years of university, I really started to explore the idea of freedom, and made that my primary value and the foundation to which I have led to make, excuse me, the vast majority of my decisions for the better half of this last decade. I would say it started off very angry. in a way where you're kind of like, screw the system, I'm running away from it sort of thing. And, has slowly evolved into just coming into your own authentic expression of myself, I guess.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I believe like your degree to some degree was a combination of psychology, but was psychology at the main base of that degree and study?
Yeah, in university I have a bachelor's in psychology and communications as well.
Okay, and how did that stimulate the degree that you were doing? And like I'm passionately curious about this because in my own life I studied physiotherapy or physical therapy from outside I think the States, and that would call it physical therapy. My degree in physiotherapy was actually me hiding from doing a degree in psychology. I know now that my calling was psychology. I was so curious about it, but the reason I didn't step forward, I can say now with clarity, was I was scared shitless to actually, in doing psychology, was me sort of accepting and putting my inner hand up. It was like symbolizing, I'm deep in this shit here. Like I sort of knew my draw to it was I was so deep within the chaos of my own mind. So I couldn't admit to it. So I sort of went with physiotherapy. So I'm just curious, you go into a degree on psychology, we sort of think that we're going to go in and study the behaviors of others, but obviously, what impact did studying psychology have on you? Was that what stimulated this emergence, this awakening, this awareness that there was this cognitive dissonance within you?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. But what's kind of funny about that, it's probably taken up until this last year or two for me to actually realize that. After graduating and moving on to Hawaii, that's where I lived for about the last 5 years, and pursuing so many other endeavors along the way. I always had this feeling like I wasn't really, using it, or if I would go back, maybe I wouldn't even attend university, that kind of thing. But this last year, these last couple of years, it's become very apparent that was the foundational piece. I've always been fascinated with the human mind, and I think studying psychology really, it was the initial awareness of myself, and it really it stimulated that awareness, that introspection to go within and understand myself. Yeah.
Mm. In one of your posts on Facebook that really caught my eye was this post about the inner child, and I think sometimes I know, like myself, when I heard inner child first, sort of 10 years ago, part of my sort of masculine, I don't think I was ever macho, but I definitely put this fucking facade of I've got my shit sorted on the outside. I didn't really resonate with the inner child. It was like, yeah, fucking inner child. Like I'm a man now, like screw inner child is for some overly sensitive fucking dude that just is, I don't know, like whatever. Not for me. I'm trying to be a real man here. Yet, as the layers have come back, it's this inner child I'm really just coming to go. It's like, yeah, this is it's like this most precious possession we have, this inner child, this childlike essence. It was one of the posts, I think it was probably the first post that I actually read off yours, and it remains with me. But I just the beauty and the spiritual poetry that flowed in your post. I just love to hear just what you have to say about like what the inner child means to you as a man now, as you sort of look back at your evolution.
Yeah, where to start with that? I guess the inner child for me, it's that place of absolute purity, of authenticity. I talked a little bit about like deprogramming and unlearning things, conditions, habits that have been ingrained in myself and in us through the last 3 decades of my life. And the inner child represents going back to that place of absolute purity, of authenticity, of playfulness. And it's an inner knowing that is never wrong. And I think listening to that inner child, it comes to the concept of playfulness, right? We can, when we harness our inner child, we just play. We do things we explore with curiosity. We do things without ulterior motives or attachments to expectations or attachment to outcomes. And we just play. And when we can take that concept of playfulness, our inner child, and apply it to the goals that we have as adults, the desires that we want to create, we can do so in such a lighthearted manner that things can just flow with ease and grace. Because I don't know about you, but for me, when there's something that I want, something that I want to create, some kind of desire, I hold on to it. I hold on to it like so tightly. I can get so attached to the outcome that I completely miss the process along the way, and we can become blind to the opportunities that come to us if we just have our head down and we're grinding like we've been taught to do as men. Put your nose to the grindstone, put your head down, pay your dues, and work. But when we can approach it through a concept of play by harnessing our inner child, I feel like the world just opens up and things can flow.
When you say that about the inner child and just that sense of playfulness and the opportunities just light up, just this image and like memories are flooding back to me now of the simplicity as young boys. I just hundreds of trees in my locality. Like we lived out in the rural, in the countryside in Ireland, and there's beautiful trees everywhere. And I have memories of going up to the top of the highest horse chestnut trees, the highest oak trees, that I'd freak if one of my daughters even tried to get 10 foot up one of those trees. But I remember, but that's the essence of the playfulness, that inner child that, we're so deeply connected with as 6-year-old, 8-year-old, and maybe sort of progressively a little bit less as we go into, being socialized and educationalized, etc. But it's I think all guys can relate with that essence of that bold, daring spirit that when I went to climb a tree, I wasn't formulating a plan looking at the 47 branches that I would have to grab hold of on the way up. It was enough to go, first branch, cool, go for it. Then you're at the first branch and you have a new perspective. It's a different perspective from the ground, but it's you just have this inner knowing, a trust. When I get to that one, you're not even thinking, when I get to that one, I'll see it light up. You just go with that and it lights up. You go with it, it lights up. And there was no big rationalization. And funnily enough, I climbed to the top of the vast majority of all those epic trees. And that's the image that flows to me now.
That's a beautiful image. There's a few things that come up for me as you said that. It's when we harness that inner child, like you said, there's no rationalization. So applying this to an adult life, to our goals or desires, and there might not be a rational plan laid out before us. We might not be able to see from start to finish. Right. But as long as you listen to it, that inner knowing, you take the next step and the next one lights up. You take the next step and the next step lights up. And it's just one after another until pretty soon you're at the top of the fucking tree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I guess the other thing that would come up, it relates to authenticity. Why did you climb that tree, Mark? Because you wanted to fucking climb the tree. There's no other ulterior motive or expectation of outcome other than doing the thing.
Yeah, it's not yet, oh, I climbed this tree because I think my teachers would approve of it, and what my parents and, extended family would think, that's a really good endeavor he's going about. They'll actually talk about this behind my back, and I'll be reflected quite good about climbing that chestnut tree. No, it's like, fucking chestnut tree, dude, this feels good. I'm going to feel epic, like at the beginning, middle, and end of this. Fantastic. And little did I know at the time then that I'd be a 36-year-old recounting the story with a dude living halfway across the planet going, man, that was epic shit back then.
Exactly.
I sort of find this funny, but like I've had conversations with other guys, but I don't know, like the point and purpose of these conversations is like inviting guys in. I think most guys, if not every single guy listening in, we all have those tales of like the climbing trees, the building the old shitty go-kart, like that we nearly crashed and killed ourselves, or the old bike, or whatever it is, like stunts, ramps, doing crazy shit. But it was crazy. We were full of life and we were unstoppable.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about playfulness, because playfulness, like it's a word you've mentioned a few times there. Just in the essence of playfulness, it was another one of those posts that just captivated me. I'm actually like, just if the guys following end up liking you or connecting in with you online, just what I find about your posts is I don't read much online, but it just with your post, I just found that it's like, okay, the first few lines and then I'm in. It's just like, okay, it doesn't matter how long, I lose track of time, but that essence of playfulness, of reconnecting with playfulness, I know it's intricately related with the inner child, but talk to me about what the depth of playfulness means to you as an adult man now in life going forward.
I guess as an adult, it's kind of like we just talked about. It's loosening the grip on the reins of it's surrendering control, and letting go of the how things come to us. It's putting an intention out there, and aligning with that vibration, and just in playing, just like enjoying it, living our lives to our fullest, being absolute. It has to do with coming back to the present moment and being present and actively engaging with minute by minute, moment by moment, hour by hour with your day-to-day life. So often we coast through on autopilot. We have these structures, these routines, and a routine is good. I have my own routines, but unless they're feeding you and full of life, then they can really like kind of do damage. Really, we coast through on autopilot, and it comes back to just playing, just being lighthearted, and just living your life.
What comes up for me, and I've mentioned in previous podcasts, like what I've been sort of obsessing on in a beautiful, playful way, is Wu Wei, effortless action. Because I know I put my hand up, it's like for so much, like I got caught up in this culture progressively of, you got to work hard, you got to put effort in, and there's so much motivational stuff out there, and definitely, I do accept that. If you grind hard, if you hustle, if you put in if you're willing to put in twice the hours of the other dudes in the industry, you can sort of grind out results. Yet, what I'm finding for my own personal self is, well, that just doesn't really fit with me, because, my emotional body was sort of telling me, it's like, yeah, I could get results and start a business in physiotherapy. I could like grind out stuff, but, my body was letting me know. Let's say my inner child, that intuition was sort of saying, Mark, that's not actually going to work out. So there's this cultural tsunami of conditioning of, you like, to be a real man, you got to put in this effort, you got to fucking grind it out. And yet there's this other way of living of effortless action. So I'm in the moment. In this moment, I'm just experimenting with what that actually means for me. I think playfulness is at the center of that. You know, in Wu Wei, in ancient China, they used to sort of liken it metaphorically, symbolically, like it's imagine like you're just lightly intoxicated. That's when you're in the flow of Tao. You know, so you're just sort of, you know, not talking about hammer drunk. I did that in college. That wasn't working out for me either. But it's like just those couple of drinks that you're just getting going, playful, and then you're just in the flow. With this playfulness, you know, what has that brought to your life? And I'm going like, I'm sort of speaking from my, you know, my old self, my sort of, yeah, but you got to get shit done. Like my old psyche sort of wants to go, you know, I can hear it coming up these days and these months. It's like, yeah, but you still got to get shit done, Mark. And I know a lot of guys like with this cultural conditioning is like, yeah, it's okay being playful, but I'm in the corporate world or I'm running my business. If I just start fucking playing around, I got to get shit done. Yet how has integrating, you know, your inner child, that inner wisdom, following this playful nature, you know, from a productivity point of view, from a, you know, creating stuff in your life, from being able to turn up powerfully, what benefits has that brought to your life that maybe you weren't experiencing before you submerge into this way of living?
I would say the first thing that comes to my mind right there is the speed at which you can get things done. You know, you enter this state of flow, and when we're in that state of flow, we can temporarily turn off our prefrontal cortex in our minds. You know, that the rational part of our mind that is responsible for our decision making, the logistical side of everything. And when we do that, we naturally take more risks. We're hyper present. And we step to our edges, and our edges expand. And so when we harness that playfulness, things can happen much quicker, rather than when we're just sitting in our safety zone, our comfort zone, and just trudging our way through shit-filled trenches, putting our nose to the grindstone, hoping that we will eventually get to somewhere. It's super interesting because I noticed that I noticed what you just said about, you know, you got to get shit done. I noticed that in myself too, and just having to remind myself to come back, do the practices, and use the tools that put me in that state of flow, kind of like slowing down in order to speed up. So there is both sides. There's both sides of the coin, right? And it's about finding that balance, and coming to a place where we can act when we are in our optimal performance. And yeah, it's just finding that sweet spot, man.
Yeah, I do. It's a beautiful way of putting it. It's like finding the sweet spot, because I think like anything with a new cultural or paradigm shift, the sort of the old cultural beliefs. Yeah, I can notice the resistance in myself. The old cultural belief system and structure in the mind wants to say, yeah, but this way works better, and it sort of it vilifies this new emerging data as, yeah, but that doesn't work. And I think when I hear guys talking about this, the resistance that comes up of, you know, finding flow and being playful and going with the inner child is like, it's almost this hyper caricatured version of, yeah, you're just on the fucking beach in Bali, meditating your ass, doing yoga, you know, you're on a surfboard, you're sipping on your pina colada. That doesn't get shit done in my life. But I know what you're saying is this, there's this meeting point between both, where, you know, the rugged, hard, determined guy that's willing to turn up, that's really important, because you got to turn up to life, you know, like as men, as husbands, as fathers, as like you know, I know guys listening in, they're running their own business, they have like 10, 20, 30 plus guys, you know, with employees, they got to get the stuff done, but there's that sweet spot. I'm curious, Jared, you mentioned there's rituals, there's sort of practices that you do that helps you sort of, stay in that zone. What are those rituals for you that you would do on a regular basis that just helps put you in that sweet spot zone?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that comes up is the morning routine for me. Like, I've noticed such significant measurable results when I stick to my structured morning routine. Sometimes it's only, I condense it within 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour, so, but just using all of these same tools throughout the morning. It starts the night before with journaling, right before bed. Turn that phone on airplane mode, whether it be 20 minutes before bed or that you'd like to do that last hour, but honestly, I never really get that last hour. So do a little bit of journaling, reflection, so you wake up in the morning. Don't even shut off your alarm. Leave that phone in airplane mode. Don't look at that phone at all. And then I usually just do like some very light stretching, and then I sit down and I do my meditation, which is, for me, the single most important thing that I do every single day, no matter what. When I don't do it, I am a victim to the world. When I do it, I am emitting my own frequency, and have whatever happens out here has less of an impact in here. So I have a pretty structured like four-phase meditation that I do, that I kind of came up with on my own. Some other practices that I do are breath work, and I explore with different techniques within that. But by doing breath work, we can stimulate the oxygen to the brain, and that gets us up, that gets us functioning right away in the morning, and it's fantastic. I also do morning journaling, excuse me, which is, we talk a lot about like, excuse me, gratitude lists, appreciation lists, that kind of thing. And I know from a male perspective too, I mean, that can sound like a bunch of, oh, I'm just going to sit down and write what I'm fucking grateful for. Yeah, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But really, when we feel into this stuff, we're all looking for this magic fucking pill that's going to like make us into the most productive version of ourselves. But for me, it's a combination of these little things repeated day after day after day. And, writing down what we're grateful for, but not only writing it down, feeling into that, feeling that sense of gratitude, of appreciation. And, like a mentor told me, like, what you appreciate appreciates. And so you're literally shifting your frequency to that level. And then, yeah, so those are a couple of the main tools that I use, as well as, I would say the biggest part of my meditation, and this reflects back into the journaling as well, is to envision what I want to accomplish. And kind of like I had just mentioned with the concept of gratitude, going into that feeling of having it, of accomplishing it already, and feeling it in its fullest. And I would say that is the primary tool that I use in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, I'm just the whole morning routine. You're reminding me of just one of the first guests, real powerful guy, Kevin Donahoe, who is definitely one of those guys that is, at the epicenter of, like, he's the definitely a top man within his industry. He has a full, beautiful, powerfully expanding company, and yet the miracle morning, the Hal Elrod miracle morning, like Kevin was talking so powerfully about the importance of that morning of rituals, just reflecting that back. And You know, when I hear you saying about the gratitude list, and you know, it's a sort of masculine mind that can sort of go, yeah, whatever, you know, that's fucking, yeah, we're just, I'm not into that type of shit. But like there's this, the research shows that, you know, in effectiveness, in productivity, in the good old black and white hard end empirical data for the cynical, and I put my old mindset and rapidly evolving, hopefully just slowly evolving and transitioning mindset that sort of says, yeah, these ideas, they're a bit woo-woo, they're a bit out there. But it's like the research shows, you know, the one of the most effective things as you know, in industry, as managers, as leaders, to help, you know, have everybody on board, have everybody fully engaged with the project, with the direction, with the goals for your company, is actually celebrating the micro wins. It's consciously showing gratitude, expressing appreciation for, wow, you know, you've got that step done. You know, little tiny steps, meaningful steps towards a goal, and that's in industry. So it's really, you know, it's a powerful practice that just not just on a personal level, but like when you go to the hard end, you want to up your productivity and you've got your results to get. It's really high end shit for, you know, the guys out there that want to get shit done type thing as well.
Absolutely. You know, we are through the repetition of this, we are quite literally forming new neural pathways in our mind, right? And it's and by celebrating these micro wins along the way, we create momentum, right? Because that goal that could seem so fucking far away, just off in the vague distance, like we're never gonna make it to the top of that mountain, right? But if you're just celebrating the next step, that micro win along the way, then you have momentum and you're climbing, and the next thing you know, you're putting your flagpole on top of the fucking mountain.
Yeah, it sort of gets back there again, that tree climbing. We were naturally doing that. It's fucking, it's like, get back to the, like, effectively, I think the essence of this, the end of this podcast is, guys, just remember what you were like as a 6, 7, 8-year-old and fucking get on with it. but it's like we naturally did that. We got to that branch, and it's not that we slow down and, oh, I give gratitude for this branch, but there was that feeling of achievement that just naturally flowed to the next. That feeling of, oh yeah, I got to that other branch. I like, oh, that was a struggle. Yes, like we naturally flowed with that without the mind getting involved of, you know, taking measure, and like, we're not there yet, you know, so we can't appreciate. It's only when we get there that we get the bonus, that we, you know, we get to say to our superiors in the company, yes, we've achieved that. And you don't get like feck all the time to enjoy that before the other 7, 8, 10 infinitely expanding projects that you have to get on. So we don't ever get this time to actually enjoy.
What's interesting about that, I think it was Tony Robbins. I was listening to a podcast of his a few months ago, and he was explaining how it's not actually the goal that satisfies us most. It's the progress along the way. You know, once we attain that goal that we've been working towards for so long, like, it's awesome for a minute, but then we're on to the next thing already. That sense of achievement doesn't last very long, but what we really desire is that momentum, that feeling of progress. And I can relate to that so heavily right now in my life, because I'm at a place where over these last few months, there's been multiple times where I have woken up and looked around and been in awe that I am living a life that was once such a vague and fucking distant dream, that, like, almost quite literally to a T, like, I dreamt this up, and all of a sudden I'm living it, and I don't even know how I fucking got here. And it's on that same level what we were just talking about, next best step, the momentum, the progress along the way. But then I've been living very close to, like, what would be my ideal days. I'm doing the things that I love, and and my cup is very full. But then I've noticed how long can you stay at that one place? Because that desire to expand is back. Even though I'm I'm doing all of these things that I thought was impossible a year ago. And, you know, I have so much appreciation for that, and for that opportunity and that freedom that's been cultivated and created. But the desire to expand is back. And you know what I mean? And so like we achieve that goal and it's awesome, but then there comes a time when like you want to keep climbing or go on to the next adventure.
Mm. Yeah, I deeply resonate with that. And it's funny, just last few of my videos I've been talking about confusion, because we expand, and part of the expansion is, you know, when you expand and expand and expand, by natural effect, like you're expanding what? Beyond your comfort zone. And what's the comfort zone? It's beyond what you know, or you think you know already. You know, you expand beyond that. And then, as you say, it's like your identity scrambles to catch up, and you're like, wow, you know, this is wow. How did I get here? Holy shit, wow. And then it just settles down, and it's a new comfort zone. And, you know, the masculine desire, the greatest desire, is this in-depth desire for freedom. You know, that's why, like, I sort of think, you know, like what do we gravitate, or what culturally is put upon us is like, you know, this gravitation towards freedom of, you know, the war films where there's the protagonist and he just emerges beyond all unreasonable obstacles to, you know, to be the hero's journey. You know, from the younger films to the older films, it doesn't matter. Like, the masculine films that attract us are these just fucking impossible what that dude got through, but like he got there in the end. And but it's like, at that point, then what? You know, you've expanded, you're the hero, you've got to that end, and you know what happens then with the hero? And I think what reminds me what you're saying is, like, you know, Joseph Campbell said, the hero's journey is not just one journey. It's sort of like you receive the call, you go into the underground, you get to where Jared is now. Wow, you've come out the far side of the underworld, the cave, and with the elixir of life. You know, there's going to be another journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm experiencing that heavily right now, that it's like you mentioned, it's a new comfort zone, and it's easy to hide in your comfort zone and mentally masturbates about the next journey when you're just sitting in your comfort zone doing things you love, right? So there is that process of expanding. I love what you said about freedom, and you know, like, we are the masculine essence. That's the core. That's the desire, right? It's the same reason why we gravitate towards American football, for example. You know, the guy has the ball and he breaks free from all the tackles and he reaches the fucking end zone in freedom, and we all live through that, and we celebrate, and we cry and we laugh and we, you know, hug each other over because a guy reached freedom. Yeah, you know, and it's you have to stay true to that desire, that journey, that masculine essence.
Jared, there's one topic that you brought up in one of your posts that really, like, it spoke to my heart, it spoke to my journey. It just is selfishness. This idea that, you know, the hero's journey of, you know, Jared Brown and Mark Usher, whoever it is, Kevin Dunno, Colin Curley, all the different New Earth King guys that are popping up around the planet. And, you know, to go for your ideal vision, to go for your ideal life, to connect with your inner child and just go, what do I want? What do I desire? Beyond the conditioned story, beyond what society says, beyond what I've been educated to think, beyond all of that. What's in this for me? You know, like, how can I live and die without regret? Selfishness is at the core of that. And you mentioned that you had experienced quite a conflict with being selfish, and this feeling that was emerging of guilt, almost like when you were typing the post, that there was this feeling of tension that was coming over your body, even just discussing it. You might just digging a little deeper around that, I think it's going to be of massive benefit for pretty much, I think, every single guy listening in, including myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially as a man, right? We have this sense of like the masculine being the provider. We bring home the bread. We put fucking food on the table, and there, you know, like gender roles aside, there is truth to that, but we forget about ourselves. And selfishness, you know, it might be the wrong word to use, but it's what comes up when we think about prioritizing ourselves and our well-being. You know, we give and we give and we give, and we think that is selfless to like continually put others first and just completely deprive ourselves from anything, from our own personal needs and from our own personal desires, even, like, you know. And you know, pretty soon we're run so dry, so depleted of anything. We have nothing left to give. And there's that, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. And you also can't rely on other people to fill your cup. So when you set out, when you prioritize yourself first, when you do the things you love, do the things, whether it's 5 minutes during the day or whether the amount of time doesn't matter. It's prioritizing, setting aside a little bit of time to do the things that fill you up and make you feel full. And then that way, when you have a full heart, when you feel completely energized, you can overflow with abundance to the people in your life. You can show up as a higher version of yourself. You can, your friends, your family, your wife, your lover, your parents, they get to experience you as the best version of you, not some fucking rundown, depleted, sad, depressed person who just hides behind being selfless and giving to others. Because, I mean, how much are you really giving? And so yeah, that's a major concept. That's a big thing for me, doing the things that I love so I can show up for other people. Because at the end of the day, the best thing you can do for anybody else is be the absolute best version of yourself. And everything that comes along with that, it's just simply a natural byproduct of you being the best you. And there's a ton of deprogramming, deconditioning to do around that. Because yeah, I mean, I remember as I was writing that, just that sentence alone, like your entire body tenses up. We're taught that that's such a bad thing. Like, to do something for me first, even before I show up for these other people, to prioritize myself, that's bad. That's selfish, you know. That's so yeah, there was a lot of guilt around that topic for me. But exploring it deeper and just allowing myself step by step to explore that, and noticing how I can show up for other people. And when I'm a better me, everybody else benefits.
Yeah, from a personal point of view, like when I think about, you know, my marriage with Matilde, we homeschool our girls, horses, blah blah blah. Like there's a lot of moving parts, like there is in every guy's life. What I've noticed about the whole inner resistance to being selfish, just like Mark, what do you feel would serve you now to relax, to be in the zone, to just feel good? What I started noticing was, you know, the likes of in our previous house, you know, going to walk the dog. I used to love that. I really loved just, you know, freedom. Just go out, get the lead, dog, man with his best friend. Fucking don't need to talk to the dog. I'm just out, irrespective of the weather. You know, just give me that sort of short walk was 15, 20 minutes. If I like abundant walk was like 45 minutes, an hour. I knew I go for a walk, I'd come back in, I'd be refreshed. You know, the battery's recharged, I'd have gained clarity, etc., etc. So I knew that, you know, my inner experience was that was good for Mark. And yet my language, the resistance would come up so clearly, intensely, you know, when I'd be communicating it to Matilde. you know, because it was this feeling of guilt. And I'd half say it, but my rational mind would get in to try and explain and duck and dive like through this emerging guilt that I was feeling, because shit, you know, I leave the house, I'm leaving Matilda here with the kids and she's had a busy day, and my language would then be this sort of half bastardized sort of lack of self-expression, and it would come out like, oh, you know, I gotta walk the dog because it's been 2 days since the dog's been walked, and you know, like she, you know, Sasha, our dog, starts, you know, she starts acting up, and like if I don't do, she starts barking. I better get out because you know, blah 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 blah. Dogs needs, dog needs, dogs needs.
Mm-hmm.
Mark's needs wasn't getting that, and like we slowed down, and like we had a real massive break, and we're still ironing that out several years later, where you know, it's okay, you know, like, and it's the more we've reflected on this, like Matilda goes to her yoga class, she goes home on the way home where there's a beautiful lake, and you know, like she was feeling this resistance of actually, you know, I'll just race home, get home, Mark has been minding the kids this morning, blah blah blah, he wants to do his podcast
Mm-hmm.
editing, etc. I was like, no, whoa. And now she goes to the lake every single day, every single class, and sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes she just feels it and it's a full hour. I'm like, look, you come home, you're home for one lunch. I know you're there. She comes back home filled up, but there's so much conditioning to feel guilty about being bloody selfish. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think, you know, you know, obviously I can't relate completely to that because I don't have a life partner. I don't have children to tend to. And I can imagine and I can empathize with how much more intensely the feeling of guilt emerges from that. But I imagine a fantastic way to work through that is to work through that together, to have an open dialogue, to understand that you need to show up full, and you know, supporting each other in what the other person needs to do to feel full,
Mm.
and
Yeah,
the ability to have that open dialogue as well.
yeah, definitely. Like it always comes back to communication, and that's where it's like the communication. It shows up in communication, like emotionality. I think, you know, we haven't had training in emotional intelligence. So many men, you know, definitely not from traditional schooling, but it shows up in their language. The difficulties we're having to digest it. Like when it comes to selfishness, like I remind guys when I'm coaching, and I remind myself now, but like I think of, you know, the Dalai Lama, you know, the most selfless man on the planet, or one of the most selfless mans, like on a global level, everybody recognized, like such an incredible soul, incredible spirit. But like, you know, his morning meditation, he's got his team. You know, you don't go in with the fires to put out around the Buddhist world or the global world with him when he's in the middle of his meditation. You know, I think of her
Mm-hmm.
Tibetan Buddhist master, like, you know, I heard stories like during the retreat of people that were sort of the team around him, sort of intimately connected, just, you know, structuring the things. You know, like there were really clear set boundaries. That's you do not go near Rinpoche during his morning time because he's doing his practices, his teachings, like he goes for his walk. Why? Because he's being selfish, because like you say,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to fill up that cup, otherwise you don't have anything to give. Like, you know, Mother Teresa, she had her morning prayer time, she had that time. So it's like this cultural story of we're not allowed, you're being selfish, it sort of falls down when, you know, these people, the icons of the mystical, religious, you know, spiritual world, if they were practicing what you're saying and filling their cup, you know, we're allowed, as, you know, the guy on the work site, the guy just turning up as a life coach, the guy going off to the factory, the guy, you know, living as a single guy over in whatever, you know, part of the world. We're allowed. That's cool. That's okay.
That is okay. Absolutely. It's more than okay. It's absolutely necessary.
Um, Part of, you know, just challenging these inner beliefs I have to say, this was actually one of your lines that I just burst out laughing. It's very rare. The only way when you're reading stuff or you're looking at videos online or wherever the source is, and if you're in company, you'll burst out laughing because you have this impulse of, yeah, I'm going to share this experience. It's almost like, yeah, I'm going to laugh out loud. They're going to ask me what I'm laughing about. There's just sort of a social thing, but it got to be really fucking funny that when there's nobody in your presence and you audibly burst out laughing. That's how it happens for me. But there was one line that you had when you were talking about sort of, I think it was like shadow work, and like there's some mornings when as guys, we wake up. Life just isn't fucking like, it's not smelling of roses, but your line was, and just to get it right, it's not all rainbows and unicorn farts. I fucking laugh my ass off because I'm in a house of, my Queen Matilda, my two princesses. This house is awash with unicorns. But I've never heard a reference to it's all rainbows and unicorn farts. But despite the funny way that you've termed that, I really get that, and it's such an important message to guys that despite the, we all sort of know, it's, well, I get that, guys that are listening in, they're awakening. There's a spectrum of awakening that most guys listening in will sort of get that, consciously following positive thinking to a certain point makes sense. But it was very interesting you're taking it. It's like, it's not all rainbows and unicorn farts. There's some times when you just wake up and it's just not all lined. The clouds are in, but that's okay too. You mind just expanding on your feelings around that?
Yeah, I think I see it specifically in the realm of personal and spiritual growth. This idea of toxic positivity, where negative emotions aren't allowed. Like, no, keep that shit away from me. I'm all just it's only positivity. It's only feel good stuff. And at the end of the day, that just means you're denying something within you. Like, this is we live in a dualistic plane where there's no light without the dark. There's always going to be ups. There's always going to be downs. There's peaks. There's valleys. And what I found works for myself. It's when I try to deny when something's off, when I try to run away from it, when I become self-avoidant, and I feed it. It by running away from it, I feed it. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, rather than just saying, all right, I feel like shit today. And being radically honest with myself, allowing myself to sit with that feeling and not being afraid of it, not running away from it, not denying it, sit with that feeling, allow it to be off. Nothing needs to change, because I think the suffering comes from the resistance. I need to get away from this. Something needs to change. I'll do anything to avoid it. And but for me, when I just sit with it, when I allow it all to come to the surface, when I release it, it allows it all to come up, and then you can let it go and move on with your day. And I think something that might have taken a few days to let go of, something that might have spiraled out of control, something that I would have taken and projected onto my relationships, from strangers onto the street to my loved ones, because of some shit that I was feeling. Instead, you sit with it and you release it, and then you can come back into yourself a hell of a lot faster than when you run away from it, when you deny it.
Jared, is there any, when you say sit with it, like to guys listening in and to myself, is there any like specific process? How would you, like, if you're describing what you mean by sitting with it? A guy, he feels this emotion comes up. He's like, he becomes aware for a moment. How do you sit with it, or what does that show up as for you?
For me, it's it's like you mentioned, becoming aware of it, acknowledging it. And maybe you're not in a space, you're at work or something, you're doing something, and you're not in a space where you can just stop and sit. But for me, I sometimes it only takes a minute or two. You stop and you just allow yourself to feel it in its fullest. You don't shove it back down. You just stop whatever the fuck you're doing and allow yourself to feel it in its fullest. And then, maybe the source of it comes to your mind, but you don't even need to analyze it. You feel it, and then it's done, and then you can let it go. And it sounds overly fucking simple, but I think that's the beauty of it.
It's funny, like it sounds overly simple, and yet there's so many practices that just are simple. You mentioned the breath work. You've lots of different experience of different modalities of breath work, and I know that for myself. I've come from the rational point of view. I love reading books, and coaching is very sort of, you talk a lot, and there's a great value in that. Yet there are really simple practices that, if more and more guys just realize, shit, like, you just do 5 minutes of breath work, that in itself is releasing emotional tensions that we can end up taking on in our warrior mindset. There's almost this culture, I find, like, I know myself, is like, where there's this badge of honor about the amount of stress that we can take with us. Like, stress generically covers all the shitty emotions that we don't want to deal with. But it's like, oh, same shit, different day, bro. I just get into the grindstone and fucking, as I banged in the hours, I got home late, but that's the way it is. Few Jack Daniels on the rocks, and fucking, like, up and at it again tomorrow. It's like this, the harder macho man is like, the more shit that you bring, but ultimately you hit the bed at night, you just know that doesn't work. So there are these simple practices. In terms of breath work, just personal curiosity, I'm getting more and more into it. What specific practices, sort of ease of entry practices for guys that mightn't be familiar with breath work, for sort of like a system reset or a refreshing the system on a daily basis? What are the practices that you have found personally, Jared, sort of work in that terms, that if you don't have the half hour to do like a fully expansive practice, what's that sort of a small pocket that gives the greatest result?
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind, doesn't take more than 2 minutes, and it's many times it's a way that I start my morning meditation as a way to instantly quiet the mind. So it's called box breathing. There's a pranayama term for it too, but more simply, it's just called box breathing. And it involves, inhaling through your nose for, the common one is 4 seconds. If you can go longer, great. So inhaling for the count of 4, holding for the count of 4, exhaling for the count of 4, holding for the count of 4, and just repeating that pattern. Quite literally, it makes a box. And for me, I find that super useful as a way to kind of quiet the mind a little bit, and drop into that a place where you're living from your heart instead.
It's not actually one of the ones that I actually do. I've slotted into heart coherence and breathing, which is the in for whatever amount, out for whatever amount, and just keep doing that like for 5 minutes. But from what I hear of different guys, it's like the end result seems to be the exact same. It's just taking this control of the breath. We've known it for millennia, but it's like it's just coming up. Where I came over box breathing first was in Dan Brulle's book, Just Breathe, which Dan Brulle is the breath working teacher of Tony Robbins. So Tony tends to track down the best of the best. But I know in that book there, you know, for guys listening in, and I was a bit dubious about breath work. You know, I'd done some in yoga, but there again, it's like, okay, I'll read this book. I was a little bit cynical because it's just fucking news. This, but embraced it anyway. But then Dan was sort of recounting these stories of, like, there's Navy SEALs going into battle, and they're in the back of their Hummer going into the depths of Afghanistan, you know, Iraq, whatever it is, and, you know, like, they're facing potential death every single time they go out. But it's like, there's one particular story of this commander going out with his troops, and the troops were sort of like asking him, it's like, "Sir, are you okay?" Like, "Yeah, I am." And he just keep going with his box breathing, and they were getting progressively anxious to the point at which the commander actually broke his box breathing going into battle, and he's like, "Guys, are you okay? What's up? Why are you asking me?" So like, insistently, they were actually freaked out that he was that relaxed going into this battle that was like a major battle. He was so relaxed, they thought he'd lost his mind. So it's like, you know, there again, is, so if it's good enough, if Navy SEALs are using this shit, guys, you know, it's like, Jared, you obviously know it. I'm beginning to humbly get my sort of picture of what breathwork is, but, you know, like, the invitation to guys is to look deeper behind breathwork, because, you know, if you're going to your construction site, you're going to your corporate job, you're going into, you know, your afternoon with your wife, you're after having maybe a bit of a row, whatever, you're going back in. There's these real tools that, like, as Jared, you're saying, it's like, there's an immediate change. It's fucking 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and you've got this incredible change. It's so effective.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't. There's so much behind the breath work that, you know, we don't notice how we're breathing throughout the day. Different external stimuli come to us, and for the most part, people are taking, you know, very shallow breaths. You know, we're not breathing fully. You know, and that also keeps us from operating at our optimal performance. So anything from day-to-day life to Navy SEALs. I know you're in jiu-jitsu, correct? And
Yeah.
that's also very, very important there. And, you know, like, it can be applied to any area of life, really.
Yeah, when you say about jiu-jitsu, I remember my first classes, you know, as a classic jiu-jitsu beginners, sort of like a mistake. Well, you don't really call it a mistake, but you unwittingly, what you're doing is panic breathing. Like, this dude is pressing down on top of you. He's about to get your limbs and bend them into, you know, whatever shape he wants. And you're there breathing, like, you're in this panic mode of breathing. And like, the central, you know, feedback of my instructor at the time, Francesco, was, "Mark, relax the breathing. Mark, just calm the breathing down. Like, you're using up all your energy." And like, it's that high up, stress inducing breath, not the low down parasympathetic. I can actually relax into this situation. Yeah, this dude is doing whatever he's going to do, but I can only find a solution from a relaxed state of mind, which, there again, it's infinitely transferable into any guy's daily expansive life of facing new challenges.
Absolutely. And facing new challenges specifically, you know, if we have our goals that we're trying to set, if we're trying to get shit done, we're expanding our comfort zones, and we're going to our edges and going to the unknown. And by doing that, our nervous system wants to go into that panic mode right away because it's unfamiliar. We don't know it. So by just checking in with ourselves, checking in with our breath, you know, we can take control moment by moment. And even if you don't have fucking 2 minutes to sit down and do an actual practice, take 5 seconds and just check in with yourself and just notice how are you breathing right now.
It is that simple. There is one tool that, and like, you talk about sort of just taking that pause, you know, just that 5 seconds. How am I breathing? There was one line that came up that you mentioned in one of your posts that I found so powerful, and I've actually found myself using it. It reminded me of a previous concept that I'd lost contact with, but it was just, when you have this pause, you notice, okay, there's momentum going here, I'm a little bit caught up, a little bit stressed, a little bit crazy in the head, but you just go, okay, take this pause. And you were suggesting just ask, how would I like to show up in this moment? And I found that's just, it's like it just crystallizes this connection with the inner wisdom that every single man has. You know, it's like, how would I like to show up in this moment? I think first and foremost for myself is like, it really cuts to the core. Like it almost, the first thing is, well, not how I'm fucking showing up the last 5 minutes. Because it's like, dude, that's, you know, God damn that question by Jared, but that's the power of it. It's like, okay, momentum, cool. Cut that momentum. But it's like, just to get to that inner core, it's such a powerful tool. But how did that show up in your life? When did you start using that as a tool? I'm just wondering, like with people that where did you come upon it?
I think it came up for me personally, just understanding when I decided to take complete responsibility and accountability for everything in my life that's showing up. And, you know, we go about our lives, and of course we have to participate in the external world, but we don't have to be victims to it. We don't have to, we get triggered, and we don't have to just be in this constant state of reacting all the time. And this is what happens when we wake up in the morning, we roll over, we look at our phone, first thing, we open instantly, our muscle memory from our thumbs goes right to social media. And we start scrolling. Our eyes aren't even open yet, or are hardly even open. And we start absorbing things from the outside in. And we instantly go into this state of reaction. And then we carry that throughout our day. Someone cuts us off in traffic, we get fucking pissed off. And like all of this stuff is just, all of these external events are fueling how we show up to the world. Then we take that anger and we project it onto someone else. And just by like taking that moment to pause, you release any element of victimhood. You regain your own power. And how do you want to show up right now? You take responsibility, you take accountability, and you get to show up as the highest version of yourself, or whatever version you want to show up as. And then you're not, for the vast majority of the time, you're not looking back at situations, interactions, events with regret, wishing, oh, I wish I wouldn't have said that, or I wish I would have did this different. So it's not even, it's a micro moment. You know, one deep breath and like, how do I want to show up right now?
I'm noticing this pattern. Jared Brown just seems to have crystallized these simple little ridiculously short tools. And that's what I'm loving about it. But it's like, and it's so powerful, because what I remember is like, you know, working as a physiotherapist, you know, people with chronic lower back pain, neck pain, etc. And like, I knew there was these simple little, you know, just do this little 5-minute exercise, and just, you know, if you just make this little shift in X, Y, Z of, you know, behavioral modifications, scientific terminology. When it's scientific, it's normally boring as shit. But I'm a recovering scientific buff. But it's like, you know, the one thing that the most common comeback of any suggestion, you know, like you're in 9.5 out of 10 pain, you know, you're going to give up your job that you've been doing like 35 years. And I'm just sort of suggesting that maybe this 5-minute exercise that you can do, or 10 minutes, maybe shit, if you did 20 minutes per day or like a couple of times per week, this can end. You can actually start kicking this back. But it's like, I don't have the time. I don't have time.
Mm.
It's just this default. Don't have time, man. You know, like, where have you got to being like in your relationship with time? Because what I'm hearing is like it's this easeful, in the zone, this playfulness. Playfulness seems to be independent of time. It's almost like the modern addiction to time and playfulness. They can't correspond. They can't. They can't coexist. What's your feelings around time? By the way, I'm coming from a really personal thing here. I have always this internal battle with my relationship and time.
There's a few things that come up with that. Like you said, being the ease and the flow and the playfulness, it doesn't really coexist with our modern understanding of time anyway. And that's the thing, when we're in that state of flow, like think of an athlete, right? When we're stretched to our edge and they're in that state of flow, when the basketball player that just can't miss a shot, you ask them and they recall these experiences of being in a state of flow, and like time is really fucked up. It's either like slows way down, like that lasted an hour or 5 seconds. I don't know. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. For me, that's been a big one. It's been a big concept for me. As I've overcome different areas where I had like a scarcity mindset, time was the biggest one for me. A scarcity of time was always a thing, thinking that I didn't have enough time to pursue all the things I wanted to pursue, to get all the stuff done that I wanted to get done. And with that mindset, that's exactly what happened. I wasn't getting shit done. So I mean, just letting go of that. If someone says they don't have time, that's a narrative that they are choosing to tell themselves. Anybody can carve out 5 minutes. And so my relationship with time, without getting too weird about it, it's not something that
I'm feeling this impulse to call out the fucking weirdness. Get weird, dude. expand this ignorant young Irish man's mind beyond what it's going, and every listener. So get as weird as fuck as you want. If I can't catch up with you, viewers at home will just notice the interested smiling Mark face would just go to but that's cool too. we like weirdness.
Yeah, well, it's just the idea of linear time. That is a completely that's a man-made construct that helps us give rational understanding to the way things work, right? So just bending that idea of linear time, and really it really just comes back down to just tuning into the present and being hyper present. And the more that we can tune into that present and be in that state of flow, the numbers on the clock don't necessarily matter. I'm interested, you said you were coming from something personal with that question.
I'm coming from something personal because, well, first of all, when you say the non-linear state of mind, it's reminding me, my wife Matilda, she's really sort of leading edge with stuff. Like she freaking completely bamboozled me with what she was saying about time just last week. Because my personal narrative at the moment, I'm nudging the edges of it. I'm starting this podcast. I've been saying in my private Facebook group, it's like, I went with this obsession with Wu Wei, which is effortless flow, which is like this timeless presence. Like what you're saying is just this, you concentrate on the present moment, you go with that, with what feels right. Say this, just go with that inner yes. And I went with 3 or 4 weeks of that. And like, whatever my experience was, Matilda, who knows me so well, like better than pretty much every other human being on the planet, she's like, Mark, it's 11 years I know you. Fucking hell, that was sublime. That was just like, there's a level of enthusiasm in you I never knew existed in you. Like it's just like there's just pre Wu Wei Mark and post Wu Wei Mark, which is this going with this timeless presence in the moment. And yet, after 3 or 4 of these sublime weeks, I ended up going with a sort of like a meltdown of overwhelm type feeling, of confusion, of shit. I've went with yes, 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 but now my plate is full, full, full. I'm like, what's going on? And I could feel these old mindset, the scarcity mindset. Yeah, it's okay. It's one thing to say yes, 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 but shit, like now productivity, time is money. All of this stuff comes back in, and it's, can you actually do? And I'm just coming gently out the far side. My intuition knew, going back to the old shit, I wasn't starting the podcast. I wasn't starting, the online growing, expanding New Earth Kings Facebook group, which is beautiful. I wasn't, right now this morning, I just sort of launched myself into leading. There's been a big transition with the jiu-jitsu club. Our coach, Colin, has decided he needs to go on a personal sabbatical from coaching. There's only one, he was the lead coach. So sort of had a restless night where it was like, here's another project. And I'm feeling this impulse to say yes. And it's just to stay in the zone of, when I come from that timeless, Wu Wei, effortless flow, everything is possible. And I actually know that. Yet there's these old thoughts that are just saying, Mark, like, you can proceed, but you're going to get caught up. I mean, you can't possibly fathom this. Right now, this morning, I'm feeling fucking epic. I'm going with the flow, and I'm learning to do that. But I do know that there's this old stuff. So that's the personal sort of story behind why I'm just digging a little bit deeper behind your beliefs on time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, that makes complete sense. It's, for me, it's, what's really funny for me, it's whenever I think, I go, like what you just said was so beautiful. And whenever I get into that state of like, you can expand so fucking fast, and then something clicks on, you're like, all right, I got it. And for me, that's an indicator that like, I don't got it, because with any kind of growth, we're breaking old patterns, we're throwing out old belief systems that have been, inherited. It's in our DNA so as we grow, anything that grows, like we stretch and then we contract, right? We expand and then we contract, we expand and we contract. And that's just the natural process. So it's like, for me, it's, you're being gentle with myself during those times, because as I contract, I used to have a very, I'd beat myself up a lot. Like, oh, you had it, man. You were fucking in it. You were creating, and now you're right back to, but you're not back to square one. But it might feel like that, but you've still stretched out a little farther, and that's just how it goes, right? It's like the cheesy metaphor with like a bow and arrow, right? You have to pull it back to launch it forward, or so it's all expanding and contracting.
Yeah, I'm loving that idea of the expanding and contracting, and an idea that I've been playing with, like with the Wu Wei. I sort of went for those 3-4 weeks where it's like, I am a non-stop expanding being. I was wonderful. And then it was like, fuck, this does not feel like expansion. This feels like, oh no, dude. It's like clinging on to no, screaming. It's like, this is contraction. And yet coming out the far side of it, I'm figuring this shit out now. So I'm like, just live on air, guys. Mark figuring his shit out. Actually, I'm constantly figuring my shit out. Like anytime I have my shit figured out. This is for you to. No, I'm always figuring my shit out. I have this sort of paradoxical idea, and I don't know, is it just me trying to cod myself? Is it me just trying to bastardize the contraction phase and go with a linear masculine way. But I have this feeling that there's like a paradox where, yeah, there's expansion, and there is like a contraction phase, yet the contraction is only in the relative realm. You know, when I listen to you and I say, like, you be kind to yourself in that contraction phase, be kind to yourself in that phase when, you know, it's not all unicorn farts. It's just, it's that day, it's contracting in. Yet the paradox that comes up for me is, if you can manage to be kind and love yourself and hold a conscious presence, like Eckhart Tolle says, the witnessing awareness behind that experience, it's like you're actually expanding. You're still within the expansion. You're just letting this, you know, the layers of the onion, you're just letting that sacred time happen, but it's a natural part of nonstop expansion. So I'm playing with that. It's just, even as I say that, it helps me ease. But am I cutting myself, Jared? Am I just trying to sort of negate the contraction phase?
No, not at all. That's the first that I've heard something like that, and that really resonates with me. That's a beautiful way of looking at it. Yeah, as you're contracting, you're still expanding, especially if you can be kind with yourself, and that's I think that's a fantastic way to look at the contraction phase, because it's so easy to get caught in that negative mindset that I didn't. Oh, what am I doing wrong? I need to. How do I get back to the good, the fucking good feels, you know? And I think that's an important piece of the puzzle, Mark. That was really good.
It's just coming up because I know with this recent things, you know, the stuff we've been putting up in the group and online, like the messages coming back is guys saying, yeah, I really resonate with the confusion part, but it's that being kind. Talking about being kind, what really jumped out at me, just you said earlier on in the conversation, you know, you said there was this point in your life when you took 100% complete responsibility for, you're the creator of your own life. Like the book, it ends with you. You're the dude that's creating a whole lot. How did you come to that point, and how has that unfolded for you? You know, a bit like my Wu Wei, was it all sort of seamless from one day to the next, or, you know, because it's a pretty big fucking paradigm shift. I'm laughing, a little bit of personal background here. I came upon like extreme responsibility. I'd sort of known it, like, you know, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, response, ability, whatever, you know, the general idea that we have a capacity to choose a response. It was cool. I got it. But like for sort of 9-10 years, I got it intellectually, but I never embodied it. But then like Navy SEAL Jocko Willink is fucking extreme responsibility. Take 100% responsibility. That's fucking it. Bookends with you. That's shit. I remember there again, it was like crest of a wave. I was like, oh, all excited. It's like, oh, my life is going to transform here. And like for 2 or 3 days, it was like even saying it to Matilda, it's like, oh, I'm 100% responsible. And I turned up epically. I was even thinking, I'm going to do a podcast on this, you know, like just extreme responsibility podcast, you know, my fucking 365 day experience with this. Day 3, I was fucking exhausted. I was like, shit, literally what this means. The paradigm shift was so massive for me. This is sort of like about 3.5 years ago. At the beginning was a really, really rough ride. How did it work? How did taking on that 100% responsibility work out for you? And how is it still working out for you?
How is it still working? It's the short answer on how it's still working out, it's an ever expanding freedom. But has it always been such a flow with ease and grace? Fuck no, dude. Sometimes it feels like a grind. Sometimes it's overwhelming and unbearable. But that's the beauty of it all. I think how it came about for me was the concept of freedom that's been, as I mentioned earlier, the motivating, driving force in the majority of my decisions since I was in my early 20s. And I've played with it on so many different levels, from financially to experimenting with living without money, to experimenting with having more money to different ways of living, whether it be, you know, converting a van and living in a van, or I built a tiny house, living mortgage free, rent free, that kind of thing. Living completely off the grid and getting really involved with organic agriculture, and, you know, growing the vast majority of my own food. And so this concept of freedom is and still is today the core of it all. But I noticed I had done a very good job at cultivating it on an external level. You know, to check off all the practical boxes, to free myself from a system that I was running away from in my early 20s, a system that I was angry at, a system that I just thought was fucking bullshit, and it's not going to work for me. And I found a way that worked for me personally, after a lot of experimentation, a way to create that freedom. But at the same time, I was still left with myself, right? And then I started exploring cultivating freedom from within. And I started picking up on my patterns with money, on my patterns in relationships, on my patterns in my day-to-day interactions. And you know, from lovers to family members to friendships, to ways that I would give away my freedom, and I would turn around and blame other people for it. I would blame external circumstances for my current situation, throw the blame at someone else for the reason I'm not getting shit done. And there was a point in yeah, maybe I was like 20, 24, 25-ish, and I was really, I felt like I had been pursuing a very, you know, kind of exploring more spiritual modalities and going along that path. And then I went to the other end of the extreme, and I got, you know, a sales job, and I decided to make really good money. And I was like defining myself by the kind of car I had. Anyway, it came down to making the choice not to be a victim anymore, and to recognize my own bullshit, being brutally honest with myself, recognizing my own patterns, and deciding to say, hey, that's on me. That's my responsibility. I need to be accountable for that. And through that concept of, you know, radical honesty and taking complete responsibility for yourself. No one makes you feel anything. No one makes you feel a certain way. There's no external reason why you are the way you are. It's all right in here. And the more I go with that process, the more that I go with that concept, you know, it's a freedom that's ever expanding.
Fantastic. Jared, I'm really curious, and you mentioned earlier on that you're sort of in this state now where, you know, you've expanded and you're at this point where, you know, everything's perfect, but there's the next evolution, the next level. Part of New Earth Kings and like the king archetype is, you know, that visionary archetype, and remaining true to that within the context of the podcast. I ask every guest coming on, you know, like, what is that 10-year epic, limitless, you know, fuck all the limits of the mind that has been conditioned, you can achieve the impossible? What's that 10-year epic ideal vision for you that's coming up for you in the moment?
What's coming up for me in the moment is, well, it starts right now. It starts right here. It starts between this conversation between me and you, to take part in this. It's a fucking revolution, really. This expansion and this growth, especially in terms of the masculine, and in referring to men. And for me, it starts with sharing what has worked for me, both externally, both internally, using the tools and helping others to experience and achieve the same levels of freedom. what is the 10-year plan? It's freedom amplified to the max, man. But not just for myself, for so many other people, men and women around the globe, to really, for men and women around the globe to really understand each other and show up for each other in the fullest way possible, to live in a way in harmony with each other, where we're giving our greatest gifts from our core, our most authentic place to the world, and experiencing limitless levels of freedom for doing so, where we are living in harmony with Mother Earth, and everything is in balance and in harmony. I mean, that's the ideal vision, right? And I'm going to play my role in making that come true.
Beautiful. I'm feeling it here. I'm just like, fuck, like this is, my mind just went, that's why you brought him on. This is like, that's your impulse was right. No, it's beautiful to hear that, and it resonates so much with that. One part of the introduction that was sort of missing, but beautifully so, and I actually consciously left it out there, was, part of I think it's that essence of an inner child. When I looked, we had message online. I said, just come on the podcast. You jumped at it. I looked at your Facebook page. It's not abundantly clear, in a world of people shouting out what they do. I'm a coach. I'm this. I've online courses. I went to your page, and it was just that sublime simplicity. It sort of gets this feeling of that was just the inner child. It's just like what you meet is Jared Brown. However, I didn't want to ask you at the beginning, because it's this repetition of such a culturally accepted norm. What do you do? Like, fuck that. Who are you? The first wave was, who is Jared Brown? And I think that's just reflected. Like, I consciously went with that because that's the most important thing for us all to connect with. However, thinking now, for guys out there that have listened, that resonated with you, and apart from connecting in with you because, you're just a fucking super cool, awesome dude with such a level of radical authenticity, etc. It's wonderful. But in what level, what level can guys connect in with you from, what it is that you do, coaching, facilitator, you're into yoga, and what level would it connect in with you in that, to connect in and, tap into your inner wisdom, guidance, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a little bit of a backstory to that. I am about 9 months. I decided to dedicate this year to this entire year to myself, to gain experience to gain wisdom through direct experience. So I set off on what was going to be a year of traveling, and I've been traveling. I traveled for about the first 6 months of this year around parts of Asia, Australia, and most recently, about 4 months ago, I got to Bali, and I decided that I needed to stay here. I needed to, the way I put it, as I need to train to develop my skill set to really focus on my creativity for this next vision. As far as the practical side of things, a yoga teacher. I am a Reiki practitioner. And most recently, I'm stepping into a role of mindset and transformational coaching, helping people, just like I explained earlier, go from where they are to where they want to be, sharing what has worked for me to amplify freedom, but in a way that is radically authentic to you, right? And I also facilitate meditations as well, which has been my primary, like the biggest tool and influencer in my whole process.
Where can the guys that have resonated with your story and are just like really feeling this massive woo way, effortless flow, effortless action, impulse to connect in with you, where can they connect in with you online?
Yeah, look me up, Jared Brown on Facebook, Jared Brown, just like the color, or Jared.Brown2 on Instagram. Or yeah, shoot me a message on WhatsApp, +1701 317 3969. And yeah, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
Brilliant. Jared, like every single guy I've had on, I would just roll on in conversation with you for hours to come. um, Thank you so much for taking the time out to just gift us with your presence, with your insights, with your wonderful charismatic presence, and just continued best wishes on your sacred heroes journey, sir.
You as well, Mark. Thank you so much.
Cool. Guys, oh God, this is my crux of the entire, every podcast episode. There's no effort for me, during every single conversation, because every guy in their unique, dynamic, incredible, extraordinary way that they're showing up. It's just how do you just do like a 1-2 minute encapsulation of it? I just go with what flows. Like Jared Brown, just such an incredible presence as a man, courageously going on the hero's path. But just the central message that personally I'd have hit home for me is just trusting that playful inner child essence, that intuition. You have impulses. Every single one of us have these impulses, but they're sacred impulses, and to allow that come out and to slow down. There's that other key thing: slow down. And there's these use of tools. Allow yourself the self-acceptance, the self-love, to actually just slow down and ask that question: how do I want to show up now? I mean, just that in itself is just such a life transformer. And just take those 5 seconds, 2 minutes, do the bit of breath work, and just take care of that inner state. Because as Jared, almost central to what he was saying, is this simple idea, but so profoundly powerful. You can't gift anything to anybody else if your cup is empty. You got to fill up that cup, and you are allowed. You are allowed. It's not selfish. That other beautiful, profound concept. It's not selfish. It's not selfish in a negative sense. It's enlightened selfishness. It's good. It's encouraged by the universe. And it's just you, when you slow down and take that sacred time to fill up your cup. Holy shit, you see through Jared just the sublime love and the radiant joy and the high energy and high vibrations. This is what is possible for every single one of us. And this is what New Earth Kings is all about. It's like every guy, the revolution is only led by guys that fill their cup. Your personal revolution, whatever that is. Then you get momentum going there. You're going to be looking at local revolutions, and then some of you, and maybe a lot of you, are going to start looking at the global level. And it is all possible. This is the podcast. This is why we're doing this. We're collectively, individually doing the work, and it's a revolution. It starts with you. As I say, other episodes, Jared believes in you. I believe in you. Get up, get going. The universe is behind you. Guys, love you lots. Have a beautiful day. We will chat with you again soon. Take care. Bye.